Welcome, everybody, members and guests to our Lunch with League. My name is Carol Watts, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of San Jose, Santa Clara. We host our Lunch with League on the third Thursday of most months of the year, and we have conversations with people who affect our lives. So today, we're so pleased to welcome Mary Ann Dewan to speak with us. She is the Superintendent of Public Schools for Santa Clara County, and she'll talk about how she and her departments in this public school system are working to give children their best future. But before we introduce her, I would like to welcome new attendees to our virtual Lunch with League. We invite everyone to join us at about 1 p.m. in a meeting format so that we can chat. And if you're not a member, we encourage you to join our organization. Just go to our website at lwvsjsc.org and click on Join the League. Or you may sign up for our newsletter and continue to attend Lunch with League and other events. This last month has seen our league quite active advocating for change on several important issues in San Jose. We've written 5 letters, and I've given statements before commissions in the City Council asking them to preserve Coyote Valley for open space and agriculture, enact the staff recommended changes for campaign finance reform, and to start work on building an independent redistricting commission before the 2030 elections. You can see our letters on our website, lwvsjsc.org/letters. It may look like it's all me because the president signs the letters and speaks for the league, but believe me, we had a very active team of people behind the scenes doing research and writing the drafts of letters. I want to especially thank Roma Dawson, Vicki Alexander, Martha Beatty, Virginia Holtz, Rita Norton, Gloria Chunhu, among others. What a great team. And I also want to give a big thanks to Taryn Upchurch and Vicki Alexander for filling in for me last month when we hosted Jason Sue while I was on vacation. They did a great job. And now I want to introduce Rosaline Zisch, who is serving as chair of our nominating committee and has been involved in education projects for us in her professional life. She has taught middle school for 22 years, and she's also run the We the People project, plus others, for the county. Rosaline will introduce our guest speaker and moderator for the question and answer period. If you think of questions that you have for Mary Ann while she's speaking, please enter them into chat. So welcome, Rosaline.
Thank you. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Dr. Mary Ann Dewan, who is, as we've already heard from Carol, our county supervisor. I actually met her when I interviewed her for Create TV. This is back in 2017, and she was the deputy that had been brought in from the Midwest. We imported her, and she was starting with a marvelous background in education, specifically early childhood education, which gave her several stars with the league, and some other issues that had been difficult to deal with in our county. So we're so glad that she's with us today. She's had 33 years of education, and happy to say that she was recognized for her leadership in civic engagements. And this is something that we look for in our counties to provide that leadership. Civics is often overlooked. The 31 schools, districts that she has different things to do with are quite a representation of the diversity of this county. Special ed programs, alternative schools, Head Start, the state preschool program, migrant ed, and just the overseeing of 22 charter schools. So it's a big job with lots of variety, and we're going to be delighted to learn more about it from our superintendent.
Thank you so much, Rosaline. It is really a pleasure to be with all of you today, and I thank you so much for your interest and support of education. I know it's such a priority for all the members of the League. I also really value the partnership that we have with the League. I've prepared some slides for today's session, and then I'm really also eager to engage in conversation and answer some questions that you might have. As I'm pulling up my slide deck, I also just want to share a little bit about the role of county superintendent and the role of county offices of education. So the first thing is that as county superintendent, we serve as constitutional officers, and so we do have some state mandated government code and education code requirements to provide fiscal oversight and accountability oversight for all of the 31 public school districts in the county. We are also a regional service provider, and we operate a lot of our own programs. So it is a job that I love tremendously, and it gives me an opportunity to advocate for the things that I care most about, which is our children and our families, and ensuring that Santa Clara County is a place where children can thrive. So my talk today is going to be through the lens of equity, and I want to share a bit about what we're doing now and what it might still take to give our children in Santa Clara County their best future. The first idea I want to share with all of you is the notion of schools as centers of wellness. We believe, and I firmly believe and often say, that you cannot separate health from education or education from health. They are so interconnected. And many of the ways that we measure the well-being of children is through the indicators that we measure at school, such as attendance and graduation rates and grades and their ability to make friends. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were seeing a lot of concerns about young people's mental health and wellness. You may have been hearing stories, for example, about increasing anxiety amongst children, increasing suicide rates, and even younger children. And I think a statistic for me, coming from a different state and into California, is how different California is in some ways, many positive and some that were concerning. And one of those that is concerning to me is that less than 5% of children in the state of California receive the mental health services that they're entitled to. We've been working really hard to advocate for changes in the system that would change that statistic and improve the overall health and well-being of children. We believe that one of the most effective strategies would be to increase the availability of mental health and wellness services on school campuses. And we know from the research that children are more likely to receive those services and to develop healthy habits when they're available on school campuses. And actually, it increases that likelihood by 21 times, significant increase. Another reason that we are putting a lot of emphasis in this work is that we know 1 in 5 students have a diagnosable mental health illness. And if we're able to identify that at its onset, we can engage in more prevention and early intervention strategies that set that young person up for success. When they don't have those access and services, we see that the outcomes are quite concerning, including that sometimes it's confusing for children. They don't know what they're experiencing, and they may engage in unhealthy habits such as substance abuse. And so there are some concerns, as I mentioned, about the lack of mental health services. In addition to what I shared earlier, California provides fewer mental health services to children under the age of 19 than any other state in the nation. And so we engaged in some consistent advocacy during the last legislative session. We were joined by Los Angeles Unified School District and the San Diego Unified School District to promote efforts to increase investments. And we're really pleased that the state legislature and the governor recognized the importance of correcting this wrong. These historic investments are going to bring billions of dollars into schools throughout Santa Clara County and throughout the state of California. Some of the strategies that we see that we're working to implement are increasing wellness centers on every middle school and high school campus in Santa Clara County, increasing the number of mental health professionals on school campuses, and improving the coordination of services and trainings in all areas: identification, prevention, and early intervention. School-based wellness centers are a collaborative effort really designed to keep schools at the heart and schools as centers of wellness. And this doesn't mean that community-based organizations who provide services outside of school or other providers are in competition with schools. In fact, it's just the opposite. We need this increased investment at schools to fill gaps and to help children know that they are welcome and belong at every school campus. And our children have been a part of designing this initiative. And these are some of the things that children have told us that they believe that wellness centers do for them. And I really appreciate young people talking about how the wellness center, although it may be a specific place on the campus, it actually impacts the entire culture of the school, of the entire campus. And it helps create safe spaces for young people to develop healthy habits, to develop relationships, and to have opportunities to engage in self-care.
Excuse me, Mary Ann, may I
Yes,
interrupt?
yes.
Are you screen sharing? If so, we aren't seeing it.
Oh, I was, and so let me double check. Thank you for mentioning that. I don't know why it didn't come back up.
Now it's going to come up, I think.
Okay, my apologies. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
And I will send the deck to you so you can share it with
Okay, that'll
all
be
the
great.
members.
Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. I mentioned that there were a lot of investments in this last legislative session. However, I do want to clarify that none of those funds have actually been distributed to schools yet, but we do anticipate that over the next 3 to 7 years, we'll see these investments make their way into California schools. There are a number of initiatives targeted at schools as centers of wellness and the mental health and wellness initiatives. Those include the Community Schools Partnership Grants expansion and the Mental Health Student Services Act, and then some others that will be competitive where LEA school districts will have to compete for funds. I also wanted to share today some of the enrollment trends. Perhaps you've read about some of this in the media, but we've had some concerns about declining enrollment trends in Santa Clara County for about 6 to 7 years now. There were 21,323 fewer kindergarten through 12th grade students enrolled in 2021 than in 2015-16. So we've seen an increasing percentage in the decline of students in our schools. This was true in our traditional public schools, and we also saw this change in our charter schools. So as you see this trend, we also saw there's been fluctuations in charter school enrollment, but there was a 2% decline from 2017-18 to 2018-19. And then our private schools also reported declines in student enrollment. And you can see from this that in recent years there has been a decline, with the percent change being quite significant from 2019-20 to 2020-21. And we do some analysis on this on a regular basis, and we see that elementary schools have experienced the steepest decline. And we also note that as groups of students make their way through the grades, that we did have a couple bubble years of higher enrollment, and those students are now in high school. And so we're seeing relatively stable enrollment in grades 9 to 12, and we're seeing that steady decline at elementary and middle school. And I also wanted to share this by region. I think it's important to note that we're seeing these declines throughout Santa Clara County. The decline in enrollment among districts that serve elementary students are depicted here on this map. And there is some variation across the county. From left to right, you can see that Palo Alto, Los Altos, Lakeside, Mount Pleasant, and Evergreen had steep declines of over 20%. And Cupertino, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Franklin McKinley, and Alum Rock also had steep declines of 15 to 20%. So again, something that we're experiencing throughout the county. And one of the reasons for that is the decline in childbirths. We're seeing that in our county, across the state, across the nation, and in fact, across the globe. And we also know that socioeconomic reasons contribute to the decline in student enrollment in our county as well. We hear from families that they simply are being priced out of living in Santa Clara County. Childcare and early learning has been a major advocacy point for us and continues to be a priority. We are very pleased with some of the success that we've had in the legislative season the last number of years. And I think you all agree that early learning is the foundation for future success. During the pandemic, we did note that there were declines in childcare capacity, and also there were declines in TK and kindergarten enrollment. And this was something of concern because we recognized that some of the virtual offerings just really didn't work well for families. But that means that many children, as they came back into programs this year, may have been almost 2 years out of a program, and that we were going to need to address their learning needs perhaps differently than years past. Also, California did make increased investments in early care and education this year with a $7.2 billion multi-year state investment in before, after school, and summer school, and also in the Universal Pre-K initiative. There are several buckets of money. I think many of you have joined us in advocacy for all the different gaps that were existing in early care and education. And the state attempted to address each of those this year by putting money in planning, providing more space, addressing the facilities barriers, increasing rates and reimbursements due to cost of living needs, providing for longer days, and to help with workforce recruitment. And the goal is that all of this increased capacity would lead to more children being served. The two purple circles on this diagram just show that these are areas where the funding is competitive. So the other areas are areas where Santa Clara County will see more funds. We will see the higher reimbursement rate, the more slots, and the stabilization funds. But we'll have to pursue the facilities and staff recruitment dollars in a competitive process, and they will also require matching funds in order for us to be eligible for that. The TK expansion was an exciting investment the state is making to ensure that all 4-year-olds will be eligible to attend transitional kindergarten. And this will allow childcare and preschool programs to expand offerings to younger children as well. And so all of these state investments are aligned to the priorities that we've identified in Santa Clara County. Those include the ones that we've already mentioned, but I also want to emphasize again the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Initiative that will require the partnership of the county, managed care organizations, private insurers, and schools in order to be successful. I'm really delighted to share about our Power of Democracy Civic Engagement Initiative, and with a special expression of gratitude to the League of Women Voters for your support of this initiative over the years. We're in our 4th year of operating this initiative with the goal to expand civic engagement and to encourage young people to engage civically, to increase curriculum resources in schools. And this has also led to the state providing the state seal of civic engagement that young people can earn along with their high school diploma. Our program has recently received recognition from the California School Boards Association. We're receiving a Golden Bell Award for our Power of Democracy initiative. One of the components of this program and a newest release is our Educator Ambassador Program. In partnership with the Registrar of Voters, we designed this program to elevate voice around voting rights, community voice, and voter registration. And this allows us to do some work all across the school year with our schools and to help provide more resources to our educators in their classrooms. And then the Registrar of Voters has been expanding their opportunities to reach out to 16 and 17-year-olds. You may have already seen these, but I thought you might appreciate seeing how friendly this marketing is to our young people to help them know, and that they receive a birthday card that lets them know that they'll be a future voter and it's time to pre-register. A number of our efforts have been organized around equity, and another one that may be little known, but I think is really important, is our Menstrual Equity Initiative. This is due to the fact that girls and young women miss work and miss school due to lack of access to their menstrual supplies, or maybe lack of understanding about what they might be experiencing. And girls who start menstruating at younger ages than their peers also face some social stigma that can be very uncomfortable. In November of 2020, we received a donation to help us distribute period products to children, to young girls during the pandemic, and providing access where they may have otherwise had access to those at schools. And we also received some funds from the Board of Supervisors to develop a program to ensure that period products would be available in public places, including school restrooms throughout Santa Clara County and agency restrooms. And then Christina Garcia put out Assembly Bill 367, which did pass this year. And this will require schools, universities, and community colleges to ensure that there are free menstrual products provided in all restrooms. And another area that we focused on in terms of equity, and we spent a lot of our advocacy work on during the pandemic, was digital equity. We've addressed devices, connectivity, and infrastructure, and really sought to ensure that all children and families would have access to a device and to a level of internet service that was robust enough to support distance learning and enrichment. And I think you're all familiar with the digital divide and the need to not only have access to computers, but also to have the digital literacy skills necessary to benefit from those resources. So our initiatives included providing those digital literacy trainings, investing in some infrastructure, distributing devices, and ensuring hotspots were available to children and families that needed them. And we also helped secure donations to pay for monthly broadband services for families that needed that as well. This digital equity initiative was designed to serve children and families from those preschool years all the way into community college. And just last spring, we shared just some of our impact to date. And so we were really pleased to be able to distribute this large number of devices, and also to provide that robust internet service to our families. In closing, I just want to say I'm really humbled and honored to serve as County Superintendent of Schools. I really believe in the work that we do to serve, lead, and ensure that all children have equitable access to a high quality, inclusive education. And my vision for that is that all children will be able to thrive in Santa Clara County, and our future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
Thank you so much. I think you covered a number of our questions, things that we were concerned about, such as the money issue. We hear about federal funds coming to schools. One-time infusion, I think, is the big term. But you mentioned even though we have money coming, it might not be for another 3 years before we see the impact of this.
There are a number of different pots of money, and I think your member rightly noted that there were both state and federal dollars that came to school districts. We've had 3 series of funds called ESSERs, the ESSERs 1, 2, and 3, that were meant to address some of the COVID-related needs. And much of that was one-time funding. Some of that was distributed based on Title I numbers, and so not every school and not every district received some of those dollars.
Mhm,
Many of the districts have been using those funds to provide COVID-19 testing, to address ventilation needs in their schools, to cover some of the unexpected expenditures for COVID, to help with staffing costs, and also to increase social emotional learning resources and mental health and wellness. The way that those particular funds, that this last round, ESSERS 3, all the schools had to develop a plan and have that plan presented to their boards of education for approval, and then those come to the county office for review and approval. So a lot of the one-time funds, much of that has already been spent,
mhm.
and they're able to spend this last pot until 2023.
Oh, okay.
And then all the new money related to youth health and wellness, we expect to begin getting the request for application and proposal for those dollars sometime after the first of the year.
Mhm.
And we expect that some of those dollars will begin to be available to schools in the 22-23 school year.
Right. Very good. Um, Another issue that we're concerned about as a league is the lack of teachers and also substitutes. We hear about schools that are really suffering right now for staff, qualified staff.
We're very concerned about the inability to recruit and retain staff in our education sector. Many other sectors are also facing a similar challenge, including healthcare. We're very concerned because that means that when children, when staff have to miss school due to COVID, we're doubly impacted. We just don't have enough staff to start, and then we also don't have enough substitutes. We've been working really hard to advertise about the vacancies. We're encouraging recruitment. One of the strategies that we employed this year was to do a big campaign around school nurses.
Oh,
So we have some banners, we have a campaign that we released to encourage applications for school nurses. So it is a big challenge, but we're working hard to address it.
right. Thank you. Um, there's yeah, a comment specific to some of our districts that don't compensate as well as other districts, but it's all part of the same package, I think.
Yeah, in fact, we've been struggling with that staffing issue well before the pandemic, and there are some worries from time to time about the variances in pay across districts. There's also variances in the cost of housing
Mhm.
across the county that do impact our ability to recruit and retain staff. But the vacancy rate that we're seeing all across the state of California.
Okay. Um, the county handles resources for the districts with special ed programs. And how is that going right now? I like the idea of the mental health um, uh, location on a campus, so it can become that very important link for our kids. But while we wait for those, because I don't think there's too many of them out there right now. I know there has been in the past, but I don't think there's many right now. So with your uh, whole program that you run for special ed, are you able to support then some of these schools with that?
With our special education program at the county office, we serve the most vulnerable and highest need students in the county.
Mhm.
These would be students with significant disabilities, or they may be medically fragile, deaf and hard of hearing, blind, and have more significant needs. In addition to the programs that we offer, which do provide that continuum of services for our districts, we also provide the Inclusion Collaborative. And the work of the Inclusion Collaborative has been supported by Charmaine Warmenhoven for almost 15 years that she supported us in this work. And the whole goal of the Inclusion Collaborative is to support more inclusive practices in schools, programs, and in community, and ensure that children with disabilities are given access to high quality education. I love this program because I believe that all children are general education students, and some of those children also need special education services. I don't think we have sped kids. I think we have kids, and some of our children have higher needs and need more services and supports. And our Inclusion Collaborative helps us support our districts and those inclusive practices, co-teaching, and universal design for learning, multi-tiered systems of support. The state of California is beginning to recognize the importance of this work as well. And just this past week, PACE, the Policy Center, released a report on the local control funding formula. And one of their recommendations is to increase funding and modernize funding for special education, and recognition that children with disabilities need to be included in their school districts and their regular school campuses and the like. And they're recommending that the state make increased investments to make that possible for our students and to provide our staff with the training they need to be successful. So just a preview, I anticipate we may see something along those lines in the governor's budget in January.
Okay, interesting. There was a concern about the internet access for our poorest districts, and you did address that near the end of your remarks today. And it looked like you've already been reaching out with providing both equipment as well as the broadband access.
There is so
Yeah.
much there's so much more to do in that area, and we're very excited about the possibilities with the federal infrastructure package and what that might do to bring more broadband services into our county. We have mountain schools that don't have great access. We have migrant camps in South County that don't have great access, and we have some neighborhoods in the city of San Jose that don't have great access. We've been working on a couple projects, the East Side project with the City of San Jose, and the East Side Union High School District has been a big leader in getting Wi-Fi access installed in their district schools for use by the community. And we're also piloting a project called CBRS, Citizens Band Radio System, that allows us to project internet into children's homes and provide them with access to the internet at home. We're doing that right now in Luther Burbank, and we're also supporting a couple other districts in that pilot. What's exciting about that is, children don't just need access to the internet when we're doing distance learning.
Mhm.
And if we really care about equity, that means we want our children to be able to have the homework assistance that they need, to be able to engage in enrichment and other activities, and get the information that they need that's, just frankly available on the internet. So
Mhm.
it also can support family engagement as well.
Right. Right. I remember a group of students from YB saying that they went to the library, but the library was closing early, so they couldn't finish this assignment. And I said, really? And you don't have any other access? No.
Hmm.
I was just quite surprised. And they weren't complaining at all.
Hmm.
They were just stating a fact. So it's very exciting to hear about this and making it a reality. Um, Someone was asking specifically about STEM and if there was anything going on with that entirety or yeah, the science program.
Yes, our science, technology, engineering, and mathematics program, we actually refer to as iSTEAM. So we include computer science and also the arts in that work. I think a lot of that work has been ongoing even during the pandemic, really trying to encourage also young girls to participate in STEM and get information about STEM careers and expanding that computer science and access to the computer science standards across the curriculum and not always as a separate course. It's just one of the examples of work we're doing in STEM.
Right. And I know that you've been supporting the acquisition of the vaccination for the 5 to 12-year-olds. Um, and I read your statement about Sesame Street and the fact that that kind of education at that level is what kids need to not be afraid of their vaccination. And it's a big job. And you've set some goals for us.
We have set a bold goal of getting 75% of our 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated, fully vaccinated before January 1st. We've really set that goal because we do worry about the winter season. We know that the vaccine is the best protection, but we also know flu season is coming and there will be holiday gatherings and the like. And so the more we can do to support and make it easier for families to access the vaccine, the better. We've been heavily involved with our partners on vaccines since our employees became eligible last spring. For 5 to 11, it's been really nice to think about ways to do it outside of the school day so that children wouldn't miss school. We feel like, children have already missed a lot of school and they're going to miss school due to COVID. If we can make the vaccine accessible, then that's 2 days of school they won't miss. And we know that it's really hard for some families to take time off work and to make it to the pediatrician's office to get the vaccine. So our clinics have been largely in the evening or on the weekends. We've tried to make them very child and family friendly. Just one example, we have activities there, but we also had invited therapy dogs and their owners to visit. And that's been a really great resource for children. And just fun stories of kids, who are nervous, maybe crying, and the therapy dog owner introducing their dog Mork to the student and saying, Mork got his vaccines and, if he can do it, you can do it. And would you like to pet Mork? And then, are you ready? And the young girl pulled up her sleeve. I'm ready now. Just really adorable that we know when we meet children where they are and that we recognize that,
Right.
they have some fears.
Oh, yeah.
Another great story from the vaccine clinic was a second grader who'd done his homework on the vaccine, and he was explaining to me the type of vaccine it was, why it's safe, and that the technology really isn't brand new, and which was also really encouraging.
Oh, the wisdom of the
The
youth.
wisdom of children.
Yes, absolutely. Um, there was a question about police, because most of our school districts now have pulled the police that have been working on campus for a long time. Um, did your department take any position on this or any wisdom that you were able to put forth?
A number of years ago, we did a report on the status of school resource officers and the level of training that school resource officers had. We also coordinated and collaborated with the police chiefs around some ideas to reduce the number of citations and how we could ensure um, a, a more appropriate response and clarity about roles. So if a school district were to choose to have school police officers on campus, there would need to be that clarity about what is the role of the school police officer and what is the role of the administrator and the teacher. Because absent that clarity, a lot of things might look like crimes and they may not be, crimes. And so we did engage with a lot of training and resources on that project a number of years ago. We also recognize that districts have limited resources and they have to make tough choices. And many of our districts see that they need more counselors, social workers, and other professionals on campus. And I also believe that there's a lot of research around the school to prison pipeline that has informed some of our thinking about the role of police officers and really a necessity to say, is the role of the police officer to protect the campus and protect the students, or is the police officer policing the campus or policing the students? And so there have been a number of studies and reports on those ideas and concepts all across the country. And I think that's been informing some of the dialogue at our local school districts. Many of them did choose to divert some of their resources more towards counselors and social workers, restorative justice, peer support groups, and other. And there are some families who report that they don't feel safe when there are police officers on campus. And there are other families who report that they feel safer when there are police officers on campus. So I think for us as education leaders, we want to make sure that our students have access to caring adults, that their campus is safe, and that they feel that they belong and they are welcomed. And we want to do our best to avoid the school to prison pipeline.
Right, right. And actually, that takes us to like court schools and the alternative education program you have at the county. Um, Numbers, have they been increased or because of COVID, or are they neutral? What's going on there, Mary Ann?
We've seen a significant decline over the last decade in the numbers of youth assigned to juvenile hall and to Blue Ridge. Um, Currently, those numbers are quite low. I believe we have less than 50 students in the programs, and I think that it speaks to a change, a dynamic, and a mindset shift about whether it's effective to incarcerate youth and what are the kinds of strategies that should be used when youth find themselves in trouble. And so our numbers are quite low. And we also see that schools have been investing a lot in multi-tiered systems of support. They've been investing in campus culture, alternative discipline strategies. And so we also see lower numbers of expulsions, fewer suspensions, and fewer students referred to our community school as well.
Mhm.
And I think another shift is our ideas around absenteeism and truancy.
Hmm.
So in the past, you may have known that if a child missed school, they and or their parents could be in trouble with the courts, and the courts might assign certain penalties as a result of that lack of attendance. And now we think differently about that. work to find ways to re-engage the students and to try to address the needs of the child and their family to encourage better attendance and really consider truancy um, as kind of that last resort process.
Well, especially in line of the COVID and the fact that most kids were being taught via um, computers and not in a classroom at all with others. I can imagine coming back now that we are seeing some discipline issues that might have been avoided if we had not had to close down. But just because kids haven't been around other children to interact, and we would like to think it would be positive, but unfortunately, it's not always. But thank you for sharing those things with us. That was, I think, important to hear. One of our members wanted to make sure that people knew that the police position back in the 1968, so that's quite a long time ago, but having the police person on campus, it was like having another counselor on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that still is true in some cases, even in the past couple of years, that there's been some unique relationship going on. But unfortunately, since we've had more violence on campuses, the police have had to be more like policemen rather than counselors, and just the I guess the atmosphere at some of our schools. And
I think that schools, reflect community, and when, we know that um, the COVID-19 caused a lot of social isolation. There were traumas experienced, loss of life, and children may be grieving. There was, I saw a statistic yesterday that there were 100,000 deaths by drug overdose during COVID-19 in the country. And so we know that some things were going on during that period of social isolation that are impacting our community and therefore also impacting our children.
right. One thing I wanted to mention is that you're on the select committee for our books of the year that we propose, and you've been serving on that for a long time. And the books you chose for 2022 for Silicon Reads, The Power of Kindness, Resilience, and Hope. But a beautiful theme for both schools and us as individuals. And so I think hopefully people will pick those books up and read them and focus on the positive things that are going on and can be going on. The League specifically, of course, has supported your civic endeavor, and we would like to continue to support the county with many of its programs. So if we feel free to reach out to us, and in whatever way that we can do that. I loved your story of the little one getting his shot.
The youth are quite an inspiration.
Yes, indeed, indeed. There was a couple of other specific questions that we had, and I think we've got a few more minutes here. Let's see. Oh, strategies for keeping high quality educators from leaving. Is there anything as a community that we can do to, other than, of course, maybe offer them lots of free meals? And even that has to be in plastic. So no, but yeah, keeping, what we have one district that's actually building some houses, I think. But that might be in San Mateo. I'm not sure.
Some of our districts have explored these ideas of teacher housing or school employee housing, and there you might see some projects come forward in the next few years. I think as in terms of recruitment and retention, even just encouraging young people to consider the field of education, to be a school nurse, to be a special educator, to teach in STEM. Um, can go a really long way. Also, once we have teachers in the field, they need to feel supported. So some of it is fiscal, it's financial, it's the ability to, live in the community in which they serve if they choose to do so. But it's also, recognizing that being a teacher can be really challenging, and
Mhm.
um, uh, feeling supported by their community can go a long way for them feeling like they can stay in the profession.
I don't think we can say kindness enough. Um, we're, as a society, have not been very kind to each other. And I've heard some of those complaints actually from a few teachers, and not to mention airline stewardesses.
Mm.
Kindness just seems to be a shortage right now. Um, anyway, the once again, I like your schedule for the vaccinations, and that's very exciting. And there's one other thing. Let's see. Oh, school boards. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that in our chat time. But there's quite a variety of school boards out there, and again, I think you mentioned the fact that getting people to run for office and also serve and volunteer, um, it's not easy, uh, and we expect them to know so many things that they maybe do not know, or they're not familiar with the terminology. In fact, you used a term that I thought that some people may not have heard of, and that's the transitional kindergarten. Um, And would you explain that so people know what is being proposed?
The state of California a few years back established an opportunity for transitional kindergarten that allowed some of the older 4-year-olds to enroll in public school. And so we already had kindergarten, and so this was a way to provide those older fours access earlier. And many states have similar programs, so California was kind of following that lead. In the recent legislature, they made investments and established a policy mindset to expand access to transitional kindergarten over a period of the next few years, such that all 4-year-olds would be able to have access to transitional kindergarten and be able to attend that program in their um, local public school. There are some barriers, and there are some things that will still need to be worked out. But this transitional kindergarten designed to serve 4-year-olds um, is part of the state's bigger initiative called Universal Pre-K. And that is if we are able to serve 4 and 5-year-olds in our public schools, we have this opportunity to increase space there, then we can make investments in childcare and preschool for those younger students, and really try to get to a place where there's universal access. A lot of parents tell us they need it. They need it in order to work, and childcare can be quite expensive and unaffordable for most families.
Hmm. Definitely these days. I think it may always have been, but it seems to be impacting us more. And a school that's close to me has both the after-school program through the Y and the transitional kindergarten, and that's over on one little corner. And it's so the school school is serving the needs, and fortunately has the space to do it. And you mentioned space once, and of course, that's one of the big issues for many of our schools. Even the ones that are planning to close, like the 3 in Cupertino, but they're not in the right locations to do a lot of other things, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens over there. But there's a lot of talk about that. One of our members was interested in the people that have dyslexia. And is there anything specific that we do as a county to help kids be identified early with that particular issue?
There is a lot of work happening across the state recognizing dyslexia and trying to provide the right kinds of tips and assessments. So tips for parents to kind of know what to look for and ways in which schools can do that earlier support. Another key component that we think is important is training for teachers on on evidence-based reading. You know, how do you teach reading and teach reading in a way that can meet the diverse needs of the students that might be in your classroom, and especially students who may have dyslexia. So I think what we're seeing is this evolving set of practices across the state. The state has been establishing dyslexia technical assistance supports in different places, and locally we have some education partners who are also skilled in that area and providing support. There's a lot more for us to do in that area, especially around the training and getting evidence-based reading practices more implemented across all of our schools.
Right. And you mentioned a support for that through technology and making sure teachers know that that's available too. And that's that link and that communication. It's been wonderful talking with you today. Thank you so much, Mary Ann.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we wish we would be really serving you lunch at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary Ann, and thank you, Rosaline. I also understand from chat that you were a member of the Los Altos Mountain View League of Women Voters.
Yes.
So that is wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Our next Lunch with League is in January. We will not have one in December because of the holiday season, but instead of Lunch with League, we are planning to meet in person as safely and comfortably as possible on December the 7th from 6 to 8:30 in the evening in downtown San Jose for an in-person holiday party. We're going to have fun with actual food and drink that we're going to share, and lots of time to catch up with League friends and to make some new ones. So watch your email for announcements about this holiday party and for the next Lunch with League. That will be the 3rd Thursday of January. So thank you again for all of you for joining us today, and we will see you soon.